vases, those paintings. Some of those moves are still being used. Hi, I'm Gabriel. I'm the head coach of Meerkats Wrestling Club, and I'm also one of the operational staff at the Wrestling Federation of Singapore.
Okay, so wrestling. So this is definitely not WWE. So can you tell us what sort of wrestling we're talking about?
I guess the biggest misconception when I mention wrestling to anyone that I have a conversation with is usually that immediately they think that there's a ring involved, choke slams, finishing moves, ladder match, Yeah. But in actual fact, wrestling that I'm involved in is an Olympic sport. Mm-hmm. So we don't wrestle in a ring. We wrestle on a wrestling mat. Mm-hmm. There's a circle on the floor. There are rules involved. There's no acting involved. It's a competitive sport. So for wrestling, right, the objective is basically to take your opponent down to the ground, and then pin your opponent.
So pin meaning as long as you cannot move. It's a bit like WWE, as long as your shoulder cannot come out or something like that.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you mentioned shoulders. Mm-hmm. So in professional wrestling, right, WWE, once you're pinned on your shoulders, you cannot move. The referee will come in, you'll go 1, 2, 3, and then the match ends, right? So for Olympic wrestling, it's similar in that you need to have both shoulders pinned onto the ground, but there's no 3 count confirmation. Right. So once the referee sees and confirms with the match ending, and then you'll just call a pin.
So by doing that, you score points.
Yeah. So the main objective of wrestling is to either you win by points or you win by a pin. So when you pin a person on 2 shoulders, you have control over your opponent. The referee will end the match. Yeah.
Oh, so it's
similar to WWE.
It's equivalent to a submission.
Yes. Yeah, similar to a submission.
Except you don't hurt so much.
Correct. Outside of that, the other way to win would be through scoring points. So different types of takedowns will score you different types of points. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you take your opponent down to the ground and he lands on his back, you get 4 points.
Right.
If he lands on his front, you get 2 points. If you manage to push him outside of the boundary, the circle on the ground, you get 1 point. Right. Yeah. So if you get a 10-point lead over your opponent, for example 11-1 or 20-10, you win the match as well.
Right, so so as long as there's a 10-point difference.
Yeah.
If you don't, is there a time limit?
Yes, so there's a time limit. It's 2 periods of 3 minutes each, and then there's 30-second break in between.
Right. You were mentioning that there are actually 2 types of wrestling that we're talking about. This type of wrestling. What's the 2 types again?
Yeah, so there are 2 styles of Olympic wrestling. There's Greco-Roman, and then there's freestyle wrestling. So Greco-Roman was the original style where when it was first introduced to the Olympics. The difference between the 2 are in the rule set. So in Greco-Roman wrestling, you can only do maneuvers that are above the waist level. So you cannot touch the legs.
Okay.
Yeah. But in freestyle wrestling, you can grab the legs, you can throw the person. There's more options that you can do.
Is this sport very old?
Yeah. So if we trace back to the roots of wrestling, right? There's historians and all that in Greece. they found like the oldest record was during even before the ancient Olympics. Yeah, it was a sport that was already being contested. So what's interesting is that a lot of those like on the vases, those paintings, some of those moves are still being used even now. Yeah.
Nice. Is there like a grading system, like in martial arts, where you start with a white belt and end up with a black belt?
Yeah.
There's such thing in wrestling.
So that's interesting about our national, our federation actually. Wrestling, it's a sport that can be found in all different cultures. Pretty much every country that has history, they have some form of wrestling, folk style wrestling. For Singapore, we are a relatively new nation, right? So actually, wrestling was just introduced here in 2008. Yeah. So they're a very new sport here. We do have a curriculum that we developed, so a national curriculum that is similar to martial arts in that there are color grades. Yeah. So in the first 3 levels, we equip the students with all the basics they need to wrestle. So we have 3 tiers actually. So there's the knowledge, and then there's the competence, and then the performance stage. The knowledge stage of our curriculum, the athletes actually learn how to wrestle. So they are equipped with all the basics that they should know as a wrestler. Of course, in terms of wrestling, there's 1,001 techniques.
There's also the combination of all sorts of things.
Exactly, but in this knowledge level, it's where we equip them the bare basics you need to know to call yourself a wrestler.
Right.
Yeah, and then subsequently at the competence and performance, that's dependent on application, right? Like how well you do in competition and all that. Then you can acquire those ranks. So I guess that's different between for us in terms of wrestling versus in traditional martial arts.
As a beginner or somebody joining the sport, what kind of training should we expect when we join such a club?
As a beginner, the first thing you will definitely learn is how to protect yourself. For wrestlers, the sport requires you to use all your joints, all your limbs on your body. So you need to have a higher level of awareness of where you put your arms, your legs, how to protect yourself if you get taken down, if you fall. Yeah. In the warm-ups, usually we have a lot of gymnastic movements. So we teach beginners how to do forward roll, how to do backward roll, how to cartwheels, handsprings, movements that you will find in gymnastics, you usually will find in wrestling.
So it's part of the training, do you dedicate certain portions to things like strength training other than I think just now that I would describe it as more flexibility and mobility.
Yes. Yeah. So we do gymnastic movements, some movements, neck bridges because wrestlers need to have strong necks. We do that in the warm up, and then we have wrestling drills, learning how to control your opponent, how to take your opponent down. That's usually during the main segment of training. We also keep things fun, we incorporate a lot of different games just to keep training more relevant. Definitely there's strength training involved as well. First, you need to be strong enough to pick up your opponent.
When the participants wrestle, it's probably going to be by age group, correct?
Yeah. So, So at competitions, right, participants are grouped into categories by both weight as well as age. So it's good in the sense earlier when we talked about barriers to entry, right? For certain sports, it's ideal if you are tall, or maybe if you are broader. But in wrestling, it goes purely by weight and by age, right? So regardless of what body shape you are or what size you are, there's a way for you to participate in the sport. Yeah, like taller wrestlers will have a style of wrestling that's unique to them. Shorter wrestlers have their own unique style. Yeah, so there's always that's what makes wrestling interesting.
Okay, as a sport and as a physical fitness activity, what sort of benefits do you say you get out of this?
Okay, so firstly, I guess the biggest benefit you get out of it is that you will come out a lot more well coordinated than before you start. And then using all the limbs in your body, like I mentioned earlier on. So you're going to develop strength, speed. You learn a lot about your body as well as not just about your body, but also how you can control another person's body, right? Also, that in terms of cardiovascular fitness, the sport is mainly anaerobic.
So meaning that it's basically a lot of explosive power.
Yeah, explosive
strength.
power, strength.
Is there anyone or any sort of conditions that you have that you should not consider trying out the sport?
Conditions.
Whether by age or medical or anything like that? Because it seems quite physical.
Yeah. In general, I would think that the level of sport, right, can be adjusted to your fitness level, and that should not be a problem. However, of course, like with any sport, if you have any pre-existing injuries, then you do need to consult a doctor before you participate. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Coach Gabe, for spending the time.